61st Diamond Anniversary. I'm Vinay Pipasania, CEO of the IIT Delhi Endowment Management Foundation. And as we raise the curtain on this milestone event, I would like to play a short audio visual on the IIT Delhi Endowment Fund.
Those were the days. Lifelong friendships, endless memories, preparing to conquer the world. You have done so well. Through the experiences and learnings at our alma mater, you have been so successful. With the learnings, the network, and the identity of being an IITian. On the occasion of its Diamond Anniversary, IIT Delhi needs you. As our alumni colleagues continue to scale new heights. Having founded more than 800 plus startups, filing over 500 patents, and publishing about 10,000 research papers, creating a significant impact for both India and the world. IIT Delhi is aspiring to go even further in the years ahead, needing to upgrade infrastructure and facilities. We, alumni, need to come together to help our alma mater move ahead with the times. We cannot allow it to lose its magic. We need to pay it forward for the next generation of IIT Delhi graduates. Let's get together and contribute to make a difference. We established the IIT Delhi Endowment Fund with the vision, a plan, and its governance to drive excellence in academics and research, and to attain global leadership in entrepreneurship, all while contributing to society and the country. To deliver on this mission requires our collective support. Let's go further by giving back. Let's give to build IIT Delhi to attain its rightful place amongst the leading institutions of the world.
Thank you once again, and welcome to this milestone event. As we know, the IITs has been around for over 70 years, beginning with the establishment of IIT Kharagpur in 1951, followed by IIT Bombay in 1958, Madras and Kanpur in 1959, and IIT Delhi in 1961. These initial institutes were primarily set up with the purpose of playing a leadership role in developing technical and scientific skills for an emerging country. University systems have a long life, and an institute like IIT Delhi turning 61 today is a relatively young teenager by global standards. The culture and nature of long-lasting institutions around the world evolves over decades, having to redefine themselves progressively to stay relevant. In these early years, the IITs have achieved considerable success, having evolved stable and independent systems with sufficient autonomy and internal checks to ensure quality. While unfortunately, some other universities in the countries have faded into mediocrity over time. In the poetic words of Nobel laureate Bob Dylan, the times, they're changing. The IITs have much further to go into the next century, requiring a vision and a role for an ever-evolving and changing future. Is just improving the quality of education and research enough to keep up with the times? Where are the IITs, which have aspirations to be globally ranked amongst 100 universities, heading towards? On the occasion of IIT Delhi's 61st Diamond Anniversary, it is an opportune moment to broadly discuss about the possible outlook of these eminent institutes. It is both my pleasure and honor to welcome our eminent panelists today, who have and continue to play a lead and influential role in the advancement of technical, scientific, and entrepreneurial capacity in the country. Firstly, I'd like to introduce Professor Ram Gopal Rao, currently Director, IIT Delhi. Professor Rao was the first elected chairman for the Indian section of the American Nano Society. He's also the recipient of the Swarn Jayanti Fellowship Shanti Swaroop Bhatnagar Prize, the Infosys Prize, the Technical Visionary Award 2020, the IBM Faculty Award 2007, and the IEEE EDS Education Award. Next, I'd like to introduce Professor Subhash Chaudhary, who is currently Director, IIT Bombay. He is known for his pioneering studies on computer vision. He's an elected fellow of all the three major Indian science academies: the National Academy of Sciences, the Indian Academy of Sciences, and Indian National Science Academy, and also a recipient of the Swarna Jayanti Fellowship Shanti Swarup Bhatnagar Prize. Mr. Gautam Kumra, an IIT Delhi alum, is the chairman of McKinsey's offices in Asia. He works closely with a range of Indian and global organizations, advising on their growth strategy, organization transformation, leadership development, and governance. He is the founder of McKinsey Leadership Institute and the Bauer Forum, a platform for CEOs and business owners to learn from fellow leaders. Mr. Rajiv Kuchar, also an IIT alum, is an active angel investor and mentor to multiple startups in the social enterprise and technology space. He's an advisor and board member of multiple large companies. He's an active founder also of the IIT Delhi Endowment Fund and a founder trustee of Laksha University in Mohali. Thank you so much for accepting to be with us today. Kicking things off, let's start with a few fundamental questions which I will request Professor Rao and Professor Chaudhary to provide their respective viewpoints. Given the aspirations of achieving leading global position by the IITs, what are the core reforms and restructural changes that IIT Delhi and IIT Bombay are prioritizing and sustaining upon? What needs to be done differently? Can we expect to see an IIT to be rated the #1 university or institute in the world anytime soon? How do we see IITs coping with the need to establish more advanced and diverse financial models to have the autonomy to deliver on those aspirations? So with this encompassing, Professor Rao, I'd like you to kick it off.
Thank you very much, Vinay. I would also like to introduce Professor Naveen Garg, who is the Dean of Alumni and International Relations at IIT Delhi. And I think this is a very interesting and important question right now. And if you look at IITs, IIT Delhi is now 60 years old. And if you look at how much have we been able to accomplish in the last 60 years, look at any rankings, let's say the QS international rankings, or since we are primarily an engineering institution, we are ranked around 50. In fact, IIT Bombay, IIT Delhi are ranked around 50 for engineering specialization or the subject engineering and technology in the world. So we are among the top 50 in the world when it comes to engineering and technology. But when you look at the comprehensive ranking, because we don't have multiple other specializations which the top universities worldwide have, so as a result, we tend to be among the top 200. But I think that will improve over a period of time because IITs are also now diversifying their educational offerings, their programs, disciplines, and all of that. So I think it's a matter of time. But where do we want to be? I think eventually we want to be the MIT of the world. I think for IITs, the aspiration needs to be, can we be like MIT? And now, where is MIT? MIT was started in 1861, while IIT Delhi was started in 1961. So MIT is 100 years older as compared to IIT Delhi. And even if you look at the number of students, IIT, MIT have similar number of students. MIT has about 13,000, close to 13,000 students. IIT Delhi today has about 11,000 students, and we will be adding, additionally 2,000 more students pretty soon. But if you look at the faculty strength, MIT has a total staff strength of 12,000, almost like 13,000. Whereas the IIT Delhi, the total staff strength, if you look at, is about 1,500. Now, out of the total 13,000 staff strength, MIT has faculty equivalent staff, like the lecturers, the instructors, and all of them, something like 2015. So that is where the difference lies. When you look at for 13,000 students, you have like 2,000 researchers and the teaching staff, whereas for IIT, for 11,000 students, we are talking of 700 faculty and another 700 kind of a staff. So that is one structure that we need to strengthen in IIT system. So we need to have more academic staff joining us, and that's one thing that you see. If you look at MIT budget today, the MIT annual budget is about 3.5 billion US dollars. Now the IIT budget in the dollar terms, if you add what we receive from government, what we spend from the research grants and all that, is about 150 million US dollars. So 150 million dollars is our budget, and 3.5 billion dollars is the MIT budget. But you also need to take into account the purchase parity. 150 million US dollars in India, if you look at the World Bank data, each dollar is about 18 rupees, 19 rupees. So now you multiply this 150 million dollars with a factor of 4, so you have like 600 million dollars. So in equivalent terms, IIT Delhi budget or IIT Bombay budget will be about 600 to 700 million US dollars in purchase parity terms, whereas MIT budget is still 4 times higher as compared to 5 times higher as compared to any of the IIT kinds of budget. So how do we reach there? So therefore you have a very deep academic kind of an engagement on a campus like MIT with almost a ratio for students and faculty to be something like 5 or 6 kind of a thing. And secondly, the budgets that MIT sees are also very high. And but on the 3 aspects of how you judge an institution, one is the education. I think our undergraduate quality is on par with MIT. I don't think MIT does anything better than what any of the IIT does when it comes to training undergraduate students. Look at where our undergraduates have gone, and they are on any day comparable to the best in the world. On the research front, we have a lot of catching up to do. Though IITs are past 15-20 years, we have been focusing more and more on the research aspects. Now even on research ranking, for example, IITs like Bombay and Delhi are already among the top 100, but we are not talking of top 100. We are talking of how do we go to the top 1 or 2 kind of positions. So there, that research depth needs to happen in our academic system. So we need to grow much stronger, much deeper in some of our academic disciplines. I think that is where we need to catch up. The third point is also innovation. The innovation is the front where we are a bit lagging. And while the education part we are doing very well, when it comes to undergraduate education, on the research front we are picking up, but on the innovation front we are far behind. I think that is where converting your knowledge to wealth, to something which is value to the society, that is something where IITs have a lot of catching up to do. And it's also happening. For example, if you look at again IIT Bombay or Delhi, we were filing 20 patents, 30 patents 10 years ago. Now all of us are filing close to 200 patents per year. I think many of these patents are getting translated into startups now, and there is a huge startup ecosystem which is evolving on our campuses. So now, having said that, so these are the differences. That is where we have a lot of catch up to do. I would consider IITs need to do 4 things. 4 things which are very different from what we are currently doing. The first is the alumni engagement in the institutional activities. Now, if you look at any of the top 20 US universities, starting from Harvard to the 20th ranked university, the alumni engagement on their boards of directors is anywhere from 40% to 100%. You go to Harvard, it's actually 100%. You go to MIT, out of their board of trustees, which is like 73, 57 are alumni of MIT alone. In IIT system, we don't even have any structured way to appoint our alumni on our boards. I think the alumni engagement has to go up on our boards, and that is one major structural change that needs to happen, so that that buy-in will come from alumni. Why would an alumnus just give money and not get involved in these activities? If they are spending their own hard-earned money, they also want to see and guide how that money will be utilized in the running of these institutions, in reaching that excellence out of these institutions. Therefore, alumni engagement needs to go hand in hand with any fundraising that we do with the alumni, and that is where one reform needs to happen. The second thing is the financial model. I think we need to diversify our financial resources. Today, IITs are completely dependent on government of India. I would think we need to go to this one-fourth kind of a model. The 1/4 of money can come from the government and must come from the government. The 1/4 of the money should be raised through tuition fee, so that students can pay what they receive as education. They need not pay while they are studying. They can even study now and pay later. I think we need to somehow, ensure that they pay back at some point in their careers to the education and the quality of instruction that they have received on the campus. The third one-fourth needs to come from the sponsored research and the research income, the research that we earn from the IP and other licensing. That is the third one-fourth that needs to come. The fourth one-fourth needs to come from the endowment funds. That is where alumni contribution will come, along with alumni participation, raising an endowment, and then having alumni to decide what the future direction of these institutions need to be. I think that is a model that we need to go. Depending heavily on just the government sources, keeping the alumni out of the governance of these institutions, I don't think is ever going to take us anywhere. So some of these diversification of our financial model, needs to happen pretty soon. And the third aspect which needs to change is also the competition in our system. If you look at any of the US systems now, there is a fierce competitiveness in the American universities for getting students, for faculty, for even athletics, and for anything that you talk about. They are intensely competing within the system and also from outside the system. I think that is also something that needs to happen. Even I would even go to the extent of saying the tenure-based faculty positions. Time has come. At some point in time, I think that also needs to happen. But for that to happen, many more things need to change. I think that competition is one thing that we need. I'm also hoping, Rajiv Kuchal is here. I'm also hoping there will be world-class private universities in India which will start competing with IITs. That is when we wake up out of our slumber and we will try to be the world class. I think that competition is very important for our systems to go to that next level. The fourth point is about governance, that autonomy. And I always say that the autonomy and competition need to go hand in hand. If you give someone too much of autonomy and if there is no competition in the system, I think that can also be misused. Therefore, autonomy and competition need to go hand in hand, and that is where a complete restructuring of our governance models with more and more alumni participation, with the government giving funds but not trying to control these institutions. In fact, the new education policy talks about all of that. And that is something that is very important. And as long as many of these top 20 universities in the US, when you look at, none of them go to government for any approval of their budgets. I think that is something that needs to happen. And I think when you do these four things, basically, one is as I said, the alumni involvement in the governance of these institutions, a diversified financial model, competition within the system or within the country to excel, and finally the autonomy that these institutions can get from all the sources that are trying to do this currently. I think if we are able to do this, I think another I would think 30 to 50 years, there is a very high chance that our institutions will be able to compete with the world's best. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rao. Professor Chaudhary, we'd love to hear about how you are looking at the similar reforms in IIT Bombay.
Okay, thank you, Vinay. So let me first congratulate IIT Delhi for their special occasion of 61st anniversary. But I must also tell the first that when I took this got the request, I misread it to be the 21st century, and this morning I found it's supposed to be 22nd century. Okay, and then I was completely at a loss that how do I say what happens after 100 years? And as far as my knowledge goes, there is only one person in India or anywhere in the world probably who wrote eloquently what would happen to him after 100 years was actually Rabindranath Tagore. Okay. Other than that, I'm not aware of anybody has written like what would happen after 100 years. But let's still hazard some kind of guess. And of course, I concur with what Professor Rao said. But let me put it with a little bit more of this thing. If you look at, I'll not take MIT. Sometimes they will say that MIT is like an aberration. It's a completely different kind of institutions than other, right? If you look at all these institutions that India has also had, okay, equivalently around the same time, okay, like let's say Berkeley, MIT, they're all same time with the 3 universities at different places in India. For the next 50 or so, their journey was fabulous in India, okay? So they really did such a fabulous job in India all over. But then what happened is that somehow the pressure and other things that started building up, and then it started going down. Okay, it's going into the, because what happened was, instead of being an university which would cater to the aspirations of the people, it was becoming more like a degree granting institutions, right? And that happened, if you look at, if you go a little later, when you talk about other universities that came up, they had some good time, but after started getting more into the degree granting. Only institution in India, probably they still have a great history, okay, and it's continuing in that spirit, is Indian Institute of Science. Okay, this is about 100 years, and they're doing excellently. Now, the reason is that you have to look at how they survived, and they have 100 years, whereas IITs are roughly about 60 years. Both IIT Bombay, Delhi are in that ballpark figure. And I would say that let's not worry too much about MIT. If you go to some of the others, let's say UT Austin or a few of the other cases, right? So they are also, similar kind of thing with, I would say about 130 odd years. And some of them are state schools, like land grant universities, and they can continue doing excellence. Okay. Now the question is, what are the things that, why they keep on going, like this, whereas there are problems in India in terms of maintaining the kind of excellence. Okay. But on the other hand, like, let's say the journey of the IIT system has been fabulous. Okay. Without being like, being boastful on this whole thing, I would say that IITs have really played a major role in, doing what they were supposed to do. And my understanding is that I can put the journey of IIT system, all these older IITs, I am putting it all in the same basket. It's basically, I can put it right now in 3 different versions. IIT 1.0, which would be the first 30 odd years of its journey, where we had to create a lot of teaching and manpower training, and which created the bottom of the pyramid. They produced excellent set of students. Okay. And that continued. Okay. Then on the top of that, next 30 odd years, it was IIT 2.0. Okay. And what it means is that now you add research on the top of that as an agenda item, because you having done some manpower, there are other schools that are also coming up. So research got a lot of focus, and we got very good researchers. The teaching and all those things also had put in a lot of emphasis also in the research. Our number of PhDs has gone up, masters we put, everybody has to do certain research. And that got a lot of benefit to IIT and brought it again to the mainstream. Now, currently, I would say that we are probably at the beginning or somewhere in the IIT 3.0. Okay. And what it means is that if you look at it, and this is being done all over India and others, and probably IIT Bombay is one of the early, I think, starter in this particular phase of getting industry into the loop and the entrepreneurial ecosystem. Let's say, for example, the SNINE, that our incubator that we have is about 17 years old now. Okay. And the companies that are there in this thing, their current valuation of all these companies is around $2.5 billion. I mean, that's not a small amount of money that we are talking about, right? Now, the thing is, if you look at this, so we are right now, almost all IITs, Delhi and Bombay and similar others, I think, few things that we are trying to do is that we put a lot of emphasis on the entrepreneurship. We have a school of entrepreneurship. We are teaching also. Okay, then we have the incubator. And then, of course, we have a research part now. This is the additional thing. So if there are for existing companies, we have to bring them closer. Okay. Now, so this would actually, so what the whole idea is that you put industry and entrepreneurial activity that's in the loop of the IIT system, so that collectively we can go further. Now, what would happen in the next, let's say, so if you can go into, let's say, IIT 4.0 or something, so what would be the next thing? Let's say we have to be successful in bringing industry on board, creating all these kind of facilities. But at the same time, I think the next thing is actually the society in the loop. So we have to, whatever we do, is that it has to have an impact. If you see that sometime it is always taken that, like we do something, what has IIT done for, sometimes common people ask the question, okay, for the common people. Now, of course, you see that it's not that IIT is a small unit in the IIT, but, it's in 1.3 billion people, okay, only few IITs. So if you start asking that, if you have to serve at all levels, okay, so the perception level, somehow it has not gone to that level that, yes, so we have to bring the societal impact into the system, society into the loop. There are different kind of initiatives all IITs are doing, okay, but probably we have to do something that changes, it touches the lives of the common people, okay. Now, if that happens, but then Professor Ram Gopal Rao said something very interesting, and I think I wanted to emphasize on that, is that in a country of 1.3 billion, and which is a pretty much young population, okay, where we say that these are the younger generation, they are our dividend, okay. Now, what are their aspirations? They're highly aspirational, our youth, okay. And if you think that in this whole big country, there are only like, let's say, less than 10 excellent institutions in a country, then actually we are doing disservice to our entire this generation, okay. And if you are on this, in that sense, like supposing we are only one or two such institutions, okay, in the top, okay, then there is no hand holding and there is no percolation. I mean, so what you call the diffusion in our language in terms of, let's say, moving the expertise to the lateral side, then it actually doesn't help the country or help us in terms of boosting ourselves. We need for our, for us IIT system to survive, we need another 50 to 60 such great institutions come up in the next 100 years so that collectively we can, you talk about MIT and see where their students are graduating from, where they're coming from, okay? And they are also actually, these people go and man the other places. So together, see, build an ecosystem. There's so many, let's say, the A+ type of universities in US, even, and they're all delivering at a high level, okay? So what we require is actually, see, in terms of, I think Professor Rao has mentioned in terms of the 4 verticals, in terms of how we would like to do it. I would suggest that certain things in a slightly different way. We need to continue with the excellence in the terms of the selection of the students. That must continue, okay? Because, they are the one who take it up to the next level, okay? Second thing is that what is very important is excellent faculty, okay? You need these people who can guide the next generation. They should be top of what's coming, because see, this is also the the type of information society means the amount of information you generate today is getting, the half-life of the information is coming down. I'm told that whatever was generated between the year, let's say the zero, from the Jesus Christ time to 1750 was actually same thing was done in the next 200 years, okay? And then next one was done in 50 years. And I am told that if this continues, your information would be they will be doubling your information very soon in about 6 months of time, okay? Now, to keep pace with this, what we also need is that we have to create excellent facilities. Professor Rao said something about purchase parity. But the equipment, when you purchase or something, that doesn't go by purchase parity. It goes by actual cost, okay? So we need to give our, student faculty to those kind of things. We have to create that ambience. So all these students, can we give them the ambience? I think our first generation of students and all, they had that ambience. But today we are falling short in terms of providing that kind of thing, okay? And then I would suggest that we'll have to give them the fodder to their aspirations. Now, this is what is more important, because what happened is that typically, if you look at European society in some sense, okay, I asked a person, like you are a professor in this very, well-known university, or a well-known professor. What does your son or daughter do? Okay, what do you expect them to? Because they were that time very kid. I was having, barbecue at their house. And they said, oh, I expect my kid to go for music or philosophy, okay? Now, can you bring into that one? Because that's actually the enrichment of life, okay? Technology all makes our life simpler. But what would make us, in that case, rich in our lifestyle? And that is something that we should look at in the future, because that would give us the fodder to excel. Okay, it's not just technology that would get us there. And that's what I think, if you look at MIT and other, they have economics, so many other humanities and others. So that's what also we need to do. So I'll stop at this point, I think, and then we'll get back if you have time.
renovate themselves. I think that's going to be an important approach. Oh, sorry. Okay. What I would now like to do is change a bit of gears now. I think we've heard perspectives from the institutes. I think now we'll have to step a little bit more externally. The users or sort of, our customers, the students, as well as the industries that we would need to provide these skill sets to. Let's go over to Gautam. Gautam, from both an Indian and global perspective, what would you say are some of the external factors and trends that will need to be factored by these institutes towards meeting the expectations of future graduates of industries and organizations to remain globally relevant and also competitive with these other leading institutions that we've just heard about, MIT and others? How do you think the IIT should progress over the next 50 years, 60 years, going into the next century?
Sure. Thank you, Vinay. And thank you for, I think, the excellent. I hope you're able to hear me, by the way. I'm not.
Yes, we are.
Okay, good. No, thanks, Dr. Rao and Dr. Shubhashri for, I think, very comprehensive comments. And I think they've articulated very clearly where we stand and where we should aspire to go. And I'm quite inspired, by the way, by the ambition that is being referred to in these conversations. So rather than comment on what's been covered, maybe I'll give 2-3 different angles, Vinay, to what's being discussed. I think one is, it's a bit like almost, I think, what should our overall aspiration be? There's been a lot of discussion about ratings and rankings, but if I anchor this in the context of, sustainable inclusive growth, and if you think about that is the real challenge for political and business leaders in today's time, and there is no business leader today who's not thinking about what is the broader impact that his or her company can make on the society. I think everyone in some shape or form is thinking about sustainable inclusive growth. And I think it's important to articulate how the role that IITs are going to be playing, are playing, and should be playing in actually delivering against that. If I take each of those dimensions, right, growth, what is our aspiration for the GDP impact for a country like India? What is the impact on our GDP that we expect IITs to make? If I think about inclusivity, what is the impact that we see IITs make on upskilling and creating jobs in a market like India? And finally, I think on sustainability, we all know that 4 of the largest carbon emitters in the world sit in Asia, and India is clearly one of them. And what is the role that IIT should play in helping decarbonize India and this part of the world? So one thing I'd say is we should also think a bit about our aspirations in the context of what the world is looking for, which is in some ways, sustainable, inclusive growth. Second thought I have is, this point we made a little bit about how do we make sure that the curriculum and the content and the pedagogy remains relevant to today's times. You see, it is perhaps now a generic statement to say, but technology is increasingly getting embedded in almost everything we do. As a consultant, having been at McKinsey now for the last 30 years, I'm seeing the rate of change and the pace at which industries are getting restructured and new industries are getting created has never been so high. And I don't think that's going to let down. And digital and analytics capabilities are getting embedded into every single aspect of doing business. Every single aspect of doing business. So the other question we have to ask is really how are we preparing, our students and faculty to make sure that they are relevant and they remain relevant for what the future is bringing upon us. So I think it is something to think about, and what does that imply, therefore, in terms of not just what we do inside the IITs, but also what we do collaboratively with the broader ecosystem of players out there, whether it's the venture capitalists, whether it's the private equity players, whether it's the technology providers. And I think we have to kind of discuss our role in this broader ecosystem of players that are catalyzing technological changes at breakneck speed. So that would be, Vinay, maybe a second thought I would leave. The third thought I would leave is, I think, really around, call it adaptive leadership. We all learned technical leadership at IIT, but as I've been in the business world for the last 30 years, I have obviously realized that how much of our challenges are not necessarily only technological or technical challenges, but they require adaptive leadership. And therefore, how do we embrace? I think one of the points, Dr. Chaudhary, you made about how do we embrace the power of true multidisciplinary thinking fully? And how do we prepare, our students to, again, grapple in a world where you will need to excel, I think, not just maybe on these future technical skills, but increasingly, leadership skills that frankly will become even more and more important as a lot of the routine and mundane jobs get, frankly, done by computers and robots. More and more human beings are going to be expected to do what only human beings can do. So how do we again prepare our future IITians in the 21st or the 22nd century to do so? So I would underscore that. I would underscore all the softer elements of leadership that classically have maybe sat somewhere in the business schools perhaps, but how do we bring some of that into what we do so that people can deal with adaptive challenges, not just technical challenges. I think the last thing I'd say is a lot has been said, but this point about how do we externalize our research? One of the things for us to be preeminent, as has been said before, we have to be preeminent at both teaching and research. And I think the best research happens when it is collaborative research, when it is impact-oriented research. And how do we continue to externalize our research and bring some of the management discipline that we've seen in the business world into how we actually develop and commercialize research? Let me leave it at that, Vinay, with just 3 or 4 thoughts to what's been said.
Oh, excellent. And I think, as they say, it's always important to know your customer. And I think the user and the beneficiary includes government, industries, and of course, different organizations, just as you mentioned. On the context that you just set over here, Gautam, I think it's a great idea now to see how other institutes are possibly taking this flag of that responsibility of generating the expectations of the next generation of students, the new millennials, the Gen Zs that are coming. So, Rajiv, you've had an extensive career in IT and now being associated with social enterprises and technology startups as well, as in the establishment of institutes that are reimagining technical and engineering education. How do you envision the future for aspiring entrepreneurs? What do you believe are the factors that would be considered by a future generation of students and aspiring entrepreneurs as their preferred choice of undergraduate studies or even advanced studies after that?
Well, thanks, Vinay. Thanks for, first of all, inviting me. It was wonderful hearing Professor Rao and Professor Chaudhary. First comment I would like to make, though we look at American universities as inspiration, but I think if we really want to learn from some country, and also which could be a potential threat, it is China. The Chinese universities in a very short period have achieved tremendous success. They are not 150-year-old. They did not have resources. They did not start. In fact, I think IITs had a head start compared to Chinese universities. I would like to, and Gautam probably would have known more heading McKinsey on what happens in China. But, when I was in Infosys and we were looking at setting up a center in China, I remember talking to this person who was head of our China center and trying to understand what kind of training we need to provide. And he couldn't understand that question. And I thought it's a language issue, but it was not. It was a cultural issue. He then finally, when he realized what I am asking, he says, but you just go to the nearest Chinese technical university and they will introduce a course on what you need. So you don't need to provide any training. It is a university which needs to provide that training to make sure that their students have jobs and they're job ready when they come out. I think it was quite an eye-opener for us. I was, on this weekend, I met a friend of mine who is also from IIT. He's from IIT Bombay, actually. And his son just finished 12th and is in this extended JEE advanced preparation, which is never happening. But he said that when he looked at the content of what are the various courses, so there seems to have been no change in the last 25, 30 years. So I think we have discussed a lot about pedagogy, but the important thing is that is it pure research or is it industry relevant? And maybe it needs to be a combination of both. The same thing goes for research. It has to be pure research, which could be government funded, and it has to be applied research, which is industry funded. Gautam spoke very eloquently about adaptive leadership. It's very, very critical. the part which really becomes very important. I know when I look at for my son, for example, when I was looking at what he's going to do, how good is their humanities courses became very important. Because let's face it, when it comes to technical pedagogy, the quality among the top, let's say 500 institutes worldwide is, as they say, 19-20 ka farak. It's not really that much difference. But what really is differentiating is the quality of humanity courses which these provide, and that can make a huge, huge difference to the way people think and relate to other people. So these are the few points which I would like to make. When we are looking at, you mentioned like Plaksha University, and the two things which I found very interesting, and it was kind of very well aligned. I'll mention 3 points because all three are relevant. First is I wanted to make sure that Plaksha is not an university for elite, and it is not. And when you really look at it, a lot of the universities, they charge the full fee, but the endowment funds largely provide the scholarships, which can at times go up to 50% of the scholarship. And then, of course, they help get the loans for the remaining people, but people pay the full fee. But at the same time, it is very inclusive. And the people who come from really lower income category uh, into Plaksha as well. The second was the kind of courses they were introducing were more around application, something which in industry people will understand, whether it is AI and robotics or in terms of bioinformatics. These are very, very specific courses relevant to an area. And I know there are people who got very excited by those rather than by, very generic courses like chemical, textile, and stuff like that. The third thing is that the focus again, which was happening around humanities, which I think Plaksha has still a way to go. My son got admission in this one very small college in the US called Olin. And Olin has a very interesting pedagogy where there are no exams and there are no books. And their reason for having no books is they say is because books are very difficult to change. And every semester, they really curate a course and along with the students and say what is it that and the industry on what is required to be given. And they can introduce a brand new course for the upcoming semester based on what the external requirements are. So I think if we have to involve the alumni, it should be not just in getting the money, but also in some of these connections. I am a investment committee partner in one of the VC funds which work with deep tech companies. And I can tell you the quality of founders and the quality of work which is going on now, or the ideas people are coming, has just undergone sea change in last 10 years that I have been in this space. And it's just amazing. Gautam spoke about sustainability. There are people coming up with wonderful ideas around, how to come up with the new energy storage using nanotechnology, for example. Now, I think it will be wonderful for the institutes like IITs to be in touch. And a lot of them, by the way, are IITians, as students. And also the people who are in the investment community many of them have IIT background. So partnering with them and seeing what is required and providing that space, that infrastructure, and that partnership will be very, very critical, I think, the years to come for IITs.
Thank you, Rajiv. So I think now with these different perspectives that have come in, both from an internal structural as well as from the external expectation standpoint, I think the question then really we have to ask ourselves is that where are the IITs then going to be headed? Are they going to be special technical institutes, or can they be a broader university? I think what we're hearing right now is that with the kind of cross-disciplinary and other expectations, the leadership development, the expectations that you have industry people ready for a future that's going to be far more digital and far more technically enabled. Are the IITs actually agile enough? And do all the IITs have to follow a similar cookie cutter method? Can they not have different strategies? We can have one which it can become a large university. We can have one which is going to be a very technically specialized, or one which is like, NSU, which is a very large technical university with lots of faculty and lots and large number of students. How can that be established? I'd like to ask Professor Rao that.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I was also, listening to what Rajiv Kuchal is saying. I think creating Chinese kind of universities requires resources and certain kind of a governance structure. That can be done. But creating the US kind of universities, there is a cultural aspect to what happens in a US university that is more difficult. IITs can become Xinhua. You give us the same amount of money, give us the similar kind of a time, IITs can actually become Xinhua. I personally don't think that's very difficult to do. But creating, some of these top US universities, the culture of innovation, the culture of entrepreneurship, that will be very difficult to, copy, and that will take some more time. But also on the second aspect that, IITs need to, modify their curriculum to ensure that students get jobs. I don't agree with that at all. IITs should not even be getting into aligning their curriculum with what the industry needs tomorrow. If the student is able to find a job tomorrow, the student will be out of job day after tomorrow, because all the areas that are emerging now did not even exist 10 years ago or 15 years ago. IITs, have always believed in making a curriculum where we teach students how to learn. IIT students have never failed to innovate, have never failed to adapt, have always gone on to new areas and became job providers rather than looking for a job after job kind of a thing. I think IITs on that count are, in my opinion, are doing it right. And even this, changing the pedagogy and the curriculum and all that is happening. Unfortunately, we all suffer from a perception problem, whether it is domestically or internationally. Nobody seems to believe that, all of this is happening in IIT. That is also the fault lies with us, because IITs have always been very inward looking. We never bothered to educate anyone on what is happening in these campuses. At IIT Delhi, we did not even have a public relations officer until 3 years ago. And we did not even think that it's important to tell people what is happening in these campuses. So I think, that inward looking nature of IIT has also contributed to the issue with the perceptions that we suffer from. But a lot of good things are happening on these campuses. A lot of changes have taken place. You look at any place, since Shubhashish is here and we know about IIT Delhi, in the last 2 years alone, at least 10 new academic programs would have been launched in just the last 2 years alone. That is a kind of a pace at which things are changing. But I think, just to add to your point, one thing which is now lacking is the international footprint. Now we have remained mostly domestic in terms of our, in students or our faculty and all of that. Time has come for us IITs to develop that international footprint. And even in the country, if you see, the progress, we have allowed our, not even the second rated, the third rated institutions to go out and set up campuses out of the country and set up campuses. We haven't allowed our top institutions to set up campuses abroad. And that, I think, needs to change. IITs need to develop that international footprint, the diversification of not only our financial model, but the diversification of our faculty, profiles needs to happen now. All our faculty come with a similar profile, a templated kind of a CV. That needs to change. I think our faculty some of them need to be joint faculty with industry. Some of them need to be professors of practice, and at least 1/4 of them need to come from all over the world and come and teach our students. I think this is something that needs to happen. If you ask me, what is that has made IITs successful? I mean, what are those things which you can pinpoint and say, this is what IITs have done, that's why they are not like any other university, they have been able to excel. I would think the first thing is our ability to conduct the world's best examinations. The objective way we admit our students is one of the most important reasons why IITs have been able to resist all kinds of pressure in this country, when it comes to admissions. So whether it is good or bad, that's the only thing that works in this country. So I think admitting year after year based on an examination, which might not be the perfect examination in the world, but you know that you may come from any background, any financial sort of a resource. If you clear this one exam, you are in. I think that is something that has stood us in good stead over the years. The second thing is the faculty quality. IITs, despite all the challenges that we face, still excel. When it comes to recruitment of faculty, we have still been able to recruit the best faculty. So I think our ability to conduct, whether it is JEE examination or the GATE examination, and develop this objective way of admitting students is one thing which has made IIT survive, all different political dispensations. And the second thing is our faculty, the quality of faculty that we have been able to recruit year after year. They could have gone out and got a 5 times higher paying job in an industry or even in a private institution, but nobody wants to leave despite the low salaries. That's because there is a certain aura about being an IIT faculty, the facilities we provide, the freedom we provide. As long as we are able to maintain these, I think IITs will be able to survive. But survival is not the question here. The question is, how do we become the world's number one? I think for that, like I was saying, there are 4 things that you need to change, but this internationalization is very important. I think we suffer significantly from a perception related problem, both domestically and outside. I think, that only way for that to happen is, become a little bit outward looking and have impact in the society through our technologies. Right now we do a lot of research, but that research is visible to peers. You write a paper, somebody cites the paper, and then everybody is happy about it. But I think once the research becomes visible in the society that IIT Delhi or IIT Bombay have developed this technology, now 1 billion people in the world are using that. I think that will change the perception, and that, in my opinion, I think needs to happen in the next 10 years or 15 years. I have every reason to believe that. And also IITs need to expand. At the end of the day, IITs have remained very tiny, to be significant. I think we need to start expanding on our faculty pool. For example, like I said, MIT, for the same number of students, has 4 times the IIT academic staff. I think that brings the depth, that brings the excellence, and I think we need to start expanding our systems beyond what we have been able to do so far.
Professor Chaudhary, I mean, you're in Mumbai, and I know space, as you said, we have to expand, and space seems to be a big challenge, I think, in all the, both the institutes, both from a capacity, but also in a form of how do we recruit the faculty. So I think the strategy of having multiple more IITs around the country, isn't there a trade-off there? Or should we take the few that we have and do a really, really good job and have them become really excellent more and more than what they are? Or do we just spread it around, and aren't the trade-offs a little bit counterproductive in your view?
So, Vinay, let me first tell you that even though, let's say, IIT started like 60, 70 years ago, okay, I don't think, the resource has ever been always plentiful. There have been always difficulties in getting, no matter when it is, either today or yesterday, right? But somehow, because of the system, the way the IITs were set up, I think thankfully, okay, we could retain the, the excellence that was, somehow we inherited, okay. And so that's what you have to see, that whether we can continue on that. Now, how do we expand? The question is that if you spread yourself too thin, it doesn't help. In the process, you dilute everything, okay. At the same time, now today's world is very, very, interdisciplinary, a lot of other things happening. You need one professor may not be able to do too many things, okay, also because you need many people on board. So you need to grow, and that has to be very symbiotic relationship. You see that what is required. You graduate, like, let's say, I think about 30 years ago, none of the IITs had bio. Okay, so very, they started slowly. Now you see that there have been many of them. I think today itself, we had a meeting with our, Sign incubator. And I find that nearly 40% of these new initiatives are actually in that domain, even though that has a long gestation period. So people, automatically people will get in, okay? And that's why you have to be extremely careful in terms of how you, grow. You need to gradually fill up. See, any system, we know we have constraints. So when you want to play, you always play to your strength and try to improve your weakness. Okay, that is the general philosophy of any kind of, whether it's a battle or whether it's, your survival. Okay, so we have to follow that. So internally, you should look at what is your strength and play to that. Now, coming back to that one point that I would like to disagree, and I think with, if you look at with Rajiv, is that, see, you have to look at, like you were talking about comparing with Olin or maybe Vassar College or something, some of these liberal. I would say that, you have to be a little careful, okay? These are very good for undergraduate teaching, okay? But if you look at from the faculty perspective, none of them, how many Vassar faculty do I know? Okay, how many Olin faculty do I know as my colleague as a researcher? Okay, what kind of contributions they make in the society? So very little. So we have to be very careful. Our job as an IIT, as a research, as well as a teaching institute, you cannot be purely on the teaching part saying that it has to be like all in school. No, okay. We'll not be hiring faculty in that domain. We have to have faculty who are excellent in terms of both research, and that's what it has to go. And that's how. So I think the model we're comparing is a different type of full-fledged university model. And that's where I think the beauty of this IIT system, I think if we have to survive for the next century, we have to have this model and we have to keep going. You have to keep mushing out pillars. There would be difficulties, there would be challenges, how to fund, how to get excellent faculty, how to have space in Mumbai. Like we are almost struggling for space. But still, I think we'll continue. Maybe, you have to cut down and say, this is our strength and this is what we will be doing. Okay, so this is definitely a possibility.
Okay. No, thank you, Professor Chaudhary. No, thank you, everyone. I think that was a really packed discussion in this short time that we were together over here. But I think the amount of information that we got is fairly expensive. I would now like to, just quickly sort of wrap this up, and I would like to now call upon Professor Naveen Garg, Dean of Alumni Affairs and International Affairs in IIT Delhi, to convey our vote of thanks for all of you. Naveen?
Thanks, Vinay. That was really a very, very wonderful discussion, and I thoroughly enjoyed listening to all of you. Thank you so much. I'm sure most of the people who are tuned in today would also have benefited from this, thought-provoking discussion amongst all of you. One thing that I found very interesting, which I also felt was was alluded to by most of the panelists here, was our ability to embrace change, right? And I think Gautam talked about adaptive leadership, and Professor Rao also talked about how we have over the last few years added many more departments and centers. To me, that seems like 2 years ago we could not have imagined the life we are leading today. And 100 years hence, we will not know what the nature of living and working is going to be. And so if we have a system in place where we can change very rapidly to the changing needs of the society, of the way we live, and Professor Chaudhary talked about moving from a convenience to enriching our lives. I think all of that is sort of towards the same thing, right? Few years hence, maybe no one needs to work because we have the machines to do all the work. And so, what is life about then? And, we still need to provide, sufficient enrichment to society. So thank you so much. And thank you, Professor Rao, Professor Chaudhary, Gautam, Ravi, and Vinay for taking the time from your very busy schedules and sharing your perspectives. It was really enjoyable. And I hope everyone here also benefited from this. This panel discussion is also an occasion to launch the IIT Delhi Diamond Jubilee fundraiser. We have set ourselves a very ambitious target, and the entire team, some of whom are here with us, is fully geared and raring to go. We believe that the numerous causes, whether they be the IIT Delhi Endowment Fund or the faculty chairs or the student scholarships or support to hostels and departments, will resonate with our alumni, and they would use this opportunity to show their love and affection for their alma mater. This is a vote of thanks. I want to thank all my colleagues in the Alumni Affairs Office, in the Development Office, and of course in the Endowment Offices, who have worked really hard to put together this panel and the fundraiser. The Alumni Affairs student team, with the coordinator here, has worked tirelessly over the last few weeks in putting together the videos and the creatives, and a big thank you and a shout out to all this wonderful set of students for making this a success. Finally, thank you to all those who are joining us here today and for the unstinting and unwavering support that you have provided to IIT Delhi over the years. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
And as we close, I would just like to play our endowment fund audio visual once again.
That's
Okay.
So you can log off. That's all. Don't have to.
Thank you. Bye, sir.
Okay, bye.
Those were the days. Lifelong friendships, endless memories, preparing to conquer the world. You have done so well. Through the experiences and learnings at our alma mater, you have been so successful. With the learnings, the network, and the identity of being an IITian. Today, on the occasion of its diamond anniversary, IIT Delhi needs you. As our alumni colleagues continue to scale new heights. Having founded more than 800 plus startups, filing over 500 patents, and publishing about 10,000 research papers, creating a significant impact for both India and the world. IIT Delhi is aspiring to go even further in the years ahead, needing to upgrade infrastructure and facilities. We, alumni, need to come together to help our alma mater move ahead with the times. We cannot allow it to lose its magic. We need to pay it forward for the next generation of IIT Delhi graduates. Let's get together and contribute to make a difference. We have already established the IIT Delhi Endowment Fund, with the vision, a plan, and its governance, to drive excellence in academics and research, and to attain global leadership in entrepreneurship, all while contributing to society and the country. To deliver on this mission requires our collective support. Let's go further by giving back. Let's give to build IIT Delhi to attain its rightful place amongst the leading institutions of the world.